Welcome to the Field Notes podcast, presented by Seaworthy Functional Medicine. Seaworthy exists to help you overcome your complex health challenges so you can be fully vital. Now, here's your host, Dr. Rob Downey.
How does our nervous system play a key role in the determining and opening the path to our healing? Today, we are so fortunate to be joined by a remarkable person, Christine Ruch. Christine, thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. Me too. Christine is a holistic transformation guide. Just that three-word phrase alone ought to be a motivator to, we could unpack that for an hour.
Yeah, we could.
So what she does is she helps people with unresolved health conditions find the path forward. She bridges science and spirit. And because she was gracious enough to give us some really helpful questions today to walk us through this, it's a great day to follow the script. Brief thing worth noting is just that Christine is a living example of what's possible because she has recovered from multiple sclerosis in response to this type of thing. And because I've seen that happen in my practice as well, I know that that alone justifies me taking this journey into functional medicine, because it was one of the many things I was told in medical school and residency was a disease management issue. It essentially was a one-way street, et cetera. And we know now there's so many neurodegenerative conditions that can and do turn around when the root causes are addressed. Anybody who's had somebody they care about have this, I think there's an intimidation factor of, wow, this is really challenging. So it's remarkable to me when we get to talk with folks that have had success with this, because it reveals a lot of intensity and a lot of insight. So thanks again. Well, let's just start from the top today, as I promised. So we're going to be talking about how integrating the nervous system healing into one's path then leads to improved outcomes. And let's just start with how you came to realize then that nervous system restoration and embodied awareness, we've got to unpack that, right? Embodied awareness were keys to your healing.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. I was diagnosed with MS in 2006, and I was fortunate enough to already be under the care of a naturopath all the way back then. And she was the one who, I was definitely already on a healing path of towards natural wellness, was more of a personal inclination of mine. And, I definitely have for 17 years, was entirely rooted in like the material world, functional medicine doctors, various healers, all sorts of data markers and tests and tinctures and supplements, and fully immersed in that world. And then I started by changing my diet. I was also diagnosed with celiac disease shortly after I had my diagnosis of MS. And so then I went on this, very intense food elimination diet. And that actually ended up opening the door to the power of food and in our healing path. And that really changed the trajectory of my entire life. I didn't actually anticipate that this would be what I was doing 20 years ago, for sure. But then the power of the food became so phenomenal for me, and I'd always loved to cook. And so I got a degree in holistic nutrition, and with an emphasis on culinary arts. And then I went on to open multiple food businesses and restaurants and food brands in Boulder, Colorado for about a decade. And that was amazing. I mean, I was like rocking life and living all the things, doing all the things perfectly, and had a very hypervigilant, hyperachieving type A life then. And that was really, it was a lot. It was about like environmental toxicity, which is also you and I both know so important. People don't recognize how important that is often. But as I was busy like making all of the best food for people with all of these esoteric diets and things like that in Boulder, I was getting sicker and sicker. And I didn't understand why, right? Because I had, gosh, the tightest diet and the tightest life and like the perfect sleep hygiene and my God, structured water. And I just like the lengths that I went to, it's just almost like surreal, to be honest with you. And the funny thing is somebody would ask me, like, are you stressed? And I'd be like, no, I love what I do. Like, I'm completely thriving. Like, I mean, yeah, it's stressful. I mean, I have 3 food businesses and 75 employees. Like, yeah, it's a lot. Um, but also, I never once considered that it was doing me harm because I didn't feel connected to the stress that I was in. To be honest with you, I found it to be invigorating
Hmm.
and something, a challenge for me to overcome. And so all of that was working fine until it wasn't. And yeah, I just had this deep call to completely disrupt my life. And it's not a call that everybody undertakes. And it was definitely a lot. It was a lot of trauma and a lot of pain. I closed all my businesses in just the span of like 4 days. And then I just started dismantling my life and recognizing all of a sudden it was just so clear that everything that I had built was no longer working for me. And even though it was incredibly painful, I went through the process of just dissolving everything. And I moved to Costa Rica to kind of like save my life and try to figure out what happened. How did I get here? And how did I go from having everything and being a pillar of the community to like living alone in the jungle in Costa Rica? But as luck would have it, actually, I think that I was guided on that path to undertake this another layer of healing that I didn't even know was possible to me. And I didn't even feel connected to previous when I had all of the things and would work with so many functional medicine doctors and take all their patients in Boulder and feed them all the right things.
Hmm.
And but through this process of working with these healers and learning this deep modality of how the nervous system truly wants to heal. And the irony of it, when I started working with these healers, I didn't even know that's what I was doing. I just was like, save my life. What did I have? What did I do? How did I get here? And it wasn't even about my health. Do you know what I mean? It was about my mind. Like
Mm.
I thought that my health was fine.
Hmm.
And it was just like, how did I lose my mind? But through this entire process, it was so powerful in such an embodied way of healing and aligning yourself. And I recognized through this deep mentorship and immersion that, wow, I was so not in alignment, right? Like I was doing one thing perfect, and that was just the material world. And I didn't have a full connection to how the trauma of my past and unhealed childhood wounds, which sounds a little bit like a lot of people are talking about that right now. And I think that that's wonderful, but also like it's true. You know, a lot of us have this within us, buried within us. And how all of these other disparate parts of the way we heal, psycho-spiritual, were not in alignment with like my material world of my like kale smoothies and my yoga and all of that stuff. And once that all started to come into alignment, then all of a sudden my health changed dramatically. And it was never my intention. And I actually thought that my health was fine. I thought my health was good. But I didn't recognize how much my hypervigilance and my hyperachieving and my type A and those types of personality traits that I had a lot of pride in were actually doing me a lot of harm. And were actually contributing to the progression of my disease while I was busy fighting it back with my perfect diet, right? And battling insomnia and all kinds of things, right? And it's so fascinating how the body, we know that the body wants to heal because this is what you do and I do for a living. But then to experience it from this direction without actually trying and allowing your body to fully express its wisdom and intelligence, and you holding space for that process to unfold is incredibly humbling. And yeah, so long and short, this is what I
Mm,
do is I help people
mm.
through this same exact process that I went through to reclaim their health and their truth and their authenticity, and then allow the healing process to just unfold magically.
Mm. Beautiful. A couple of things I want to share with our audience who I thank for joining us. One is that if I had to pick the most important thing to share, if I had to distill it down to one thing, it would be that when folks are puzzled about they're doing everything right, but they're not getting better. Nobody taught me this. I just learned it over the 20 years of functional medicine. There's typically, if you play the odds, there's some point of shutdown. And a couple of things that you said sort of fit that around the sort of the stress distress parts of the body are running the show, informed by trauma, in my experience. And the chill executive can't run the rest and digest, rest and restore software that's our native birthright. And what I think is so beautiful about it is then there's this spiritual journey, which is very much like a great novel or a great movie, in that we do need to sign the waiver for the adventure of our life
Yes.
to have these cool things happen. Uh, so let's pause on embodiment before we go into trauma and stress, because I think I just have a very strong feeling this word needs to be unpacked. Are we talking about being present for our own life? Is this being in our body versus dissociated? How would you characterize this? What do people need to know about this?
I love that you asked that question, actually. And before I started this work, I would be kind of triggered by the word embodied because it's kind of thrown around a lot. And I don't think that people fully understand it because the word embodied lives in our head as a mental construct. But embodied is actually something that you actually feel, like, and it's a feeling of embodiment. But what I think is important in this regard, in this work, is this idea of there's a lot of nervous system work happening in the world right now. And I think that that's super timely and really powerful. People are starting to have a greater connection to this idea of nervous system regulation. But the nervous system doesn't want to heal through cognitive modalities. The nervous system is highly relational and wants to heal in relation. And that is an embodied experience. That is something that is a true felt sense that you can't just cognitively like do, like a course or something like that. You read a book or you watch a TED talk or something like that. And you're like, oh, I'm going to do that. This is a process of embodiment. And it's a process that's from the inside up as opposed to the top down. And so I think it's a beautiful way to have full respect for like this healing process. And really, I love also what you said too, it's about this surrendering to the journey that you're going to take when you decide that you're going to try to release this cognitive way of understanding things and trust that your body and all of its divine wisdom knows exactly what to do. If you let it take the driver's seat and you get out
Mm,
of the driver's seat, you get in the
mm,
passenger seat.
mm.
And that right there in and of itself is a big step for a lot of people. It's like, how do you do that exactly? So
Mm.
yeah, it's
Thank
definitely
you.
an important part of the healing process, of the embodiment part of it.
As we move on, you described that it sounds, what I heard is this insistent voice said, "Hey, it's time for a change." Do you think everyone has that? I mean, my favorite characterization, that sounds spiritual to me. And also then my favorite characterization of spirituality, which I think is very inclusive and inviting, is it's honoring a sense of something larger than ourselves. And so were you always somebody that had that? Some folks might be listening and they think, oh, I've never been spiritual, so I can't do what Christine's describing. But I talked to countless people who there was a stretch of their life where that wasn't happening and then it did. And also countless people were there where that was happening their whole lives. But when that whatever that is knocked and they opened the door and stepped through the door, really great things happened. I think this is why we give permission for Reiki. I've mentioned this before, but it's why, isn't it mind blowing that we need to give permission for whatever happens in response to the healing? I think this again is we're actually saying whatever adventure ensues, we're signing up. So talk a little bit about that before we go on, because that might be an intimidation factor. Oh, I'm not as spiritual as Christine. I'm not as much of an adventurer. But I was not raised as an adventurer, and I've been swimming in waters you're characterizing for many, many years, and that's been the most profound source of my own personal healing, and it's made me the most effective as a functional medicine doctor. So I do think we should talk about it.
Thank you. I totally agree with that. And I think it's really interesting. Like, yeah, I would definitely have always characterized myself as like, if on balance, I didn't have like a regular spiritual practice other than, let's say, going to yoga or spending a lot of time in nature. And occasionally I would certainly explore like meditation, and I'm nothing against it. And I'm a regular meditator now, but I didn't actually recognize, just as a little side note, sometimes with people who have a chronically dysregulated nervous system, just the act of trying to establish a meditation practice can be dysregulating. And so I think a lot of people don't recognize that, and they like poo-poo, they can't do it and they can't figure it out. And it's like, it's not necessarily all something for everyone, especially at the beginning when you're trying to do some nervous system work. But setting that aside, I didn't really consider I wasn't like doing all these things and striving in a spiritual way whatsoever. Doing any of that. I was doing the basic like 3D life kind of things, you know? But on balance, I would consider myself more spiritual than religious, right? I didn't have like a strong religious upbringing or anything like that. And so, yeah, when this knock on the door happened and I walked through it, and I think adventure, right? Like, not everybody has to blow up their life and move to Costa Rica, but I do believe we all have this deeper knowing. And this is where I think this is what's so beautiful about all the changes in the world today, is that we're moving from this place of like what I call peak knowledge, and we can find answers to anything we want online. AI is everywhere, right? But what about peak wisdom? And that's this sense of intuition, this inner knowing, and that is all within us. It's not here, it's here. And we all have it, but I think we live these busy lives and we outsource all of our knowledge to all of these other modalities, and we deify knowledge to the expense of intuition or wisdom. And we all have it. And so I think, though, one of the other things that came to me when you were chatting or posing your question to me is this bigger idea beyond embodiment and beyond this intuition and wisdom is the word allowance. Because we all create these rigid structures in our life, and we don't allow ourselves to feel the thing, to solve the thing, to trust the thing, to listen to ourselves. We don't have the allowance in place for that. And allowance is a practice, right? Like, we don't necessarily recognize that we're so used to holding so tight to everything and having such constriction about everything, whether it's our opinions or the sense of control that we have and agency that we believe that we're exerting over our life. It's really all about rigidity and control. That's the thing that's so valued in our culture. And the thought of allowance feels a little slippery, feels a little bit like, oh no, I don't want to lose control, or I might be complacent, or there's a lot of other words that come along with the idea of allowance. But I love the idea that the power is in the allowance and not in the control. Or actually, the power is in the surrender, is what it really is. And the power is in the surrender and not in the control. And I think, like, having people start to just play with that idea of, like, how can allowance become a place of surrender for you in your life? And what would happen if you just created more allowance for things in your life? And so,
Highlight and underscore that, everybody listening. If you've been struggling,
so going
stop it.
allowance.
Stop and just feel.
Stop pushing.
Stop and feel that in your body. Ask yourself what's happening in your body. As we go to this next part, then, about the role of trauma and stress, which has been illuminated all the way back to the Kaiser Permanente study about adverse childhood events, ACEs, the work of Keisha Ewers, the HURT trial, et cetera. As we segue into that, I don't want to forget to mention that, similar to that feeling of, okay, it's time for a change, I've noticed this embodiment in that I'm personally and professionally slowing down more and more into the moment all the time. And now there is a feeling in my body when something doesn't sit right. And it's been really helpful and really refreshing to trust that. And I really like it that it's immediate and it doesn't have anything to do with AI or tech. It feels timeless. And I also like it that sometimes it's about my relationship to what's going on. I might I might have baggage cropping up where I need to make a course correction and do a loving kindness practice towards somebody I have adversity with. But sometimes it's about naming something that's happening coming from the other side of the equation, and I guess what would be nonviolent communication, right? This is what I'm experiencing. This is how I feel. This is what I value. This is what I want. And so I never know in that moment when it doesn't sit right. Is it about me? Is it about them? Is it about both? Is it something else? But uh, it's just been so nice to say, oh, there's that feeling. Something in this moment needs to be recognized. And then the feeling in the body changes. Basically, the sensor quits flashing. Okay, you're good to go. You've identified whatever dilemma needs to be resolved. So again, I hope folks, lots and lots of the experts I talk to say, we need to be living in the apartment of our lives in our body to remodel the apartment. We can't be checked out or dissociated or, just blowing off all the little lights flashing on the on the dashboard. Um, okay, so the role of trauma and stress.
Where shall we go with this?
Well, it gets talked about a lot. So probably the most important thing, what's your take? So much of what's important now gets talked about, but it doesn't necessarily get talked about well or in a state-of-the-art fashion or accurately. Almost everything important has a caricature of itself that's out there in the digital ether that's not serving folks. So what do folks
Yeah.
actually need to know?
Yeah, what folks actually need to know is that it is really true. I mean, there is a lot of talk and it's hard to discern, like, who knows what about what. But it is true. You and I both know this. And you've talked to so many healers and so many people on your podcast. You know this is true. this is our nervous system is our way of relating to the world and our way of finding safety, both within and without. It's our sensing, feeling part of ourselves that extends outside of ourselves. And it's part of our fascia, it's part of the cells of our body, it's part of every part of our body. And I think seems esoteric because you can't like go in and find your nervous system like you can other organ states and things like that. But no question about it that when you have an interrupted stress response in your life, and a lot of it from childhood, right? Because it's just accepted. This is just cultural. This is generational. And it's just, we don't have a way of talking about this or understanding how to move these things and recognize that emotional suppression is a huge disruptor of our health. And emotional suppression starts in childhood where we experience something that is difficult. I call it, I don't like to even call it trauma as much because that's a very loaded word right now, but really just like taking the edge off of it without negating the depth of it. And that is an interrupted stress response. And, just like a dog will shake or animals and they'll shake off things. And there's a lot of primitive ancient cultures, dancing, drumming, chanting, singing, that all have this way of moving things out of our body. And we don't recognize that our nervous system wants to keep us safe and works in tandem with your ego to keep you safe and tell you stories. And that we actually can take ownership of this process. And this is part of the embodiment process, right? Because this is part of being in your body. It's not part of being in your mind. But when you create a new relationship with your nervous system and full allowance, and you create this safety within, then your nervous system knows exactly what it wants to let go of. It is way smarter than you and I. It's kept us safe and it kept generations of us safe, for better or for worse. And I think that we get all caught up in like, what am I holding and what does this mean? And oh, I want to go unpack what my mom like did this to me when I was a kid or whatever that is. But we don't recognize that our nervous system doesn't hold awareness like that. It just holds the energy, vibration, tension that it wants to let go of. And it will naturally come up and we will naturally clear these things from our system when we are able to create a space within ourselves to allow and trust what is coming forth. What I also love that you said before is this idea of witnessing. You're creating this beautiful relationship with yourself where you're allowing yourself to just witness the experience, the feelings that you're having, and just hold that without necessarily reacting, taking action from that. And not to say that there isn't action that needs to be taken, but aligned action that happens with reflection and sitting and holding and experiencing what it is that is moving through your body. And also, you feel safe enough to allow that. A lot of us shut that down, bypass that process. We get on our phone, we scroll, we pour a glass of wine, we get ourselves busy, we turn on a TV show, and we don't just trust that this is the way that we are meant to relate to the world and to ourselves. And this idea of creating this environment within where you trust these experiences to not derail you, not hurt you, that they're actually wisdom that comes from being able to just be with this. And I love that idea. Me too. I mean, I had a job. I mean, gosh, I had a completely different life many years ago. And I think that there is something really, really magical about being able to build this container within yourself to witness everything that you're feeling and trust that your body wants to release everything, all the things. We can go on and on and on. But
Fantastic. Yes. So if somebody's living with a chronic illness, and you may have just invoked it, but let's explore it more deeply. What's a powerful reframe or first step that they could explore today? And isn't this nice? Because we want people who are in this digital ether that we're in, we want them to end this session and say, This is like a glass of water when I'm in the desert on a hot day. I can do what Christine said right now.
Yes, I think it's about like if they want to take something from our conversation, it's like learning to honor yourself, come home to yourself, meet yourself. And I have a strong belief that this process starts when you learn to hold yourself in all that you are. We have a lot of people who, well, I would say most everybody, that don't actually have a connection to that and don't know where to begin. And so I think to get to where you are and where I am, where you can be in this vast space of holding all that you are and all that is happening to you in the world, it starts really slow. And it starts with 30 seconds at a time. I just call it just sitting with it, not meditation where you're trying to like create this blank screen in your mind, but actually being in your body, holding whatever emotional space that you are managing for like 30 seconds. And a lot of people ruminate and find it really difficult to just do something like that for 30 seconds. And what am I supposed to do? What does this mean about me or whatever? And you can say to yourself during this time, there's nothing to fix. I think a lot of us think that we have to fix something, or we tell stories about an emotional state that we're experiencing, and then we create a story around that, and then we make decisions from that place, and none of that serves us. And I think starting to sit for 30 seconds at a time, and it doesn't matter what it is that triggers you. Someone cuts you off in traffic, you're late to pick up your child from school, you fall down the like Twinkie train at the grocery store and you can't resist it. It doesn't actually matter at all. It just is a matter of acknowledging when you're in a state of emotional discomfort to just sit for 30 seconds and just hold that space for 30 seconds and remind yourself there's nothing to fix, because just like you already noticed within yourself, that sensation passes and it doesn't identify you. Um, but it seems kind of counterintuitive. You're like, really, all of this that you and I are talking about starts with this? Yeah, 30 seconds at a time. And then gradually over time, that 30 seconds can turn into days where you're just saying, like, I'm in a serious funk, but I'm not that. I am experiencing this, but I am not that. And then we start to develop this idea of being the witness and
Mm,
witnessing ourselves. And being able to witness ourselves is like where so much magic is. It's just really undervalued. Yeah.
right
So
on.
30 seconds at a time, there's nothing to fix.
Ah, yeah. Such good stuff. Well, related issue then. So when clients establish with you, they feel overwhelmed, they feel discouraged or disconnected. Um, you've talked about one of the things you do. So what else? It's often helpful during the podcast too to acknowledge, we're talking to experts who work with people, right? They're available. I used to just save that to the call to action, but sometimes it's helpful to give people a sense. So if they connect with you, what else are they going to do? What can they expect? What's the homework?
Homework. Well, I think what's the fascinating thing is this is a container that is all about self-regulation or about co-regulation. Because I had said before, the nervous system is highly relational and it doesn't work from a cognitive basis, but it works highly relationally. And so we create this container where then I'm always holding space to allow you to slowly come home to yourself and slowly start to build this sense of safety and trust within. And then actually, what ends up happening too is there's a lot of things that happen. It's a very mystical, magical process, but it is actually grounded in science. So I'm not just woo woo out there. It really is. There's some deep science around this. And but what happens is when the nervous system is held in this container of relational safety, and I'm witnessing you as you're learning to witness yourself, you are being witnessed. A lot of times we don't recognize actually how valuable and powerful just that process is alone. A lot of people are never witnessed. Going to your therapist once a week or once every other week is not enough witnessing. This is like a full-time I'm your full-time witness for 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when you begin these small, subtle things that might not seem like it has any connection to the state of health that you're struggling with, but I promise you it does. Because then suddenly you're able to recognize that intuition that you and I were talking about, recognize the wisdom within you, recognize and trust the voice that's telling you the thing that you always try to bypass that you and I were also talking about. And you'll also start to recognize the wisdom of your nervous system as it lets go of the things it doesn't want to hold anymore. And so then it's a matter of me holding space for you because it can feel a little ungrounding when this starts to arise. And then I'm here to witness all of that. And through this process of co-regulation, then your nervous system will begin to recognize this is a new baseline. A lot of times we do these nervous system practices, but we keep ourselves dysregulated by the choices that we make in life. And so this is a different way where you are the one who is reprogramming your nervous system baseline. And it starts in co-creation, and it starts with me witnessing and holding this space of complete regulation for your nervous system to latch into and be like, oh, this is how it feels to be regulated. Mm-hmm. And then over time, through these various relational experiences, then suddenly you will start to make all of these different connections, and then your body starts working for you. It starts trusting you. You start creating a different relationship with you. And then all of a sudden, the healing takes off in a totally different way.
Thank you. I love it that some of the most important things people can do. One of the traps I think of Western industrialized society is sort of mechanistic thinking, especially the dose. So, if something happens in a moment, then they only get a moment's worth of healing versus, $50,000 worth of a 2-week workup at Mayo Clinic, they get $50,000 in 2 weeks worth of healing. But the words here that I think are operative are quantitative versus qualitative. So quantitative is just time, money, but qualitative is often what's missing. I just characterize it as you can't supplement your way out of a lifestyle deficit, but more importantly, you can't lifestyle your way out of a mental, emotional, spiritual hole. And this is invoking words and phrases from Institute for Functional Medicine Training. So I'm definitely invoking the functional medicine matrix or operating system when I use those words. And I think that's even the bifurcation in my practice, in that there's an honesty that's critical, that's mission critical. And so sometimes hard things will come up and I can feel it in my body, where like a bird dog, I know there's a pheasant in that wheat. I'll just feel it.
Like a bird dog for sure.
I'm feeling it. There's a breakthrough right here. But sometimes that's a bifurcation point because people have a right to say, I'm not interested in that. But sometimes it's almost like two magnets rejecting the poles. I mean, it's almost like circumstance like flings them out the door of my practice, right? It's not awkward or unpleasant or unprofessional or impolite. It's just there's not an innate curiosity and courage to go into the weed after that, whatever's in there. And so this is probably the most important topic in healing, given the changes in the world, because this sets the stage for everything else to work. Then the tests make sense, the lifestyle comes into focus, and it's dose independent. So people only need tiny, tiny little moments of this to start this sort of ramifying into everything else. That's what I witness all the time. I mean, that's my favorite thing about this kind of work.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing as well, because after so many years of efforting and control and striving and fixing, it was incredibly powerful to come into a place where all of those rules no longer applied. And I think what's super fascinating about this as well is like, oh my gosh, there's so many ways that I could spin this up. We could talk forever. Um, but one of the things that I find is really, really powerful as well is like this idea that we heal like at the pace of nature. Like there's a wisdom to the pace at which we heal. And now you can force healing and you can go on like a 30-day cleanse, or you can go on all these modalities that force a particular outcome and you will see an outcome. But is that outcome permanent? A lot of times it's not. I mean, you will see data markers shift and make revelations in your health, and some of it will be right. Some of it will be something that's a forever change, but not all of it. It's like a bone that's broken will heal in its own time. We know how long a bone takes to heal. A pregnancy, a pregnancy takes the amount of time it takes.
Mm-hmm.
We can even go deeper and say the change of the seasons. We can't force spring to come any earlier. We can't force a flower to bloom any sooner. And when we start to recognize that while there are modalities that can force a health outcome, that's not necessarily congruent with how the body actually divinely heals. And can we actually hold space and trust for our innate wisdom, our innate healing wisdom to actually emerge? Because I would suggest that that healing is more solid, more like real. That's not something you're going to backslide on. That's real process. That's real healing. That's not this forced effort that doesn't have a grounded place to land if we don't have congruency in a lot of these other areas in our life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really, really interesting that yeah, something so small can be so powerful, and I think that's an exciting thing for people to try to wrap their brain around because we're all used to just striving and efforting and putting a lot of control on the healing process. And this is where like in like the best relationship is that I'm not saying work with Christine, you don't need Dr. Downey. You need Dr. Downey. I I'm not a functional medicine provider, but I am holding space for you to put your body into a place of full receptivity for all of Dr. Downey's wisdom. And it will land in a way that's permanent and sets you up to the next level of your own healing, right?
Mm.
Sometimes we get in our own way in the
Mm-hmm.
healing process
Mm-hmm.
and sabotage ourselves. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you've seen that, but
Oh
I sure
yeah.
have.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is a great one. I think this is kind of the perfect last idea for people to hold as some sort of resonant node. So just to add to what you're saying, so many healing paths are this and that, not this or that. Again, not grasping one thing and shoving another thing away, but also want to really acknowledge what Christine's saying because it's been so humbling for me. I had these sort of aha moments recently that what I thought I was doing, doing well in school, going to medical school, et cetera, being part of a in Western industrialized society, being an MD is very respected, right? So that's like a characterization of the trajectory. But when I was really honest with myself, I just kept my experience was I just kept showing up in the moment over and over again. And I was always really interested in the well-being of other people. Sort of that's my jam. Sometimes in an unhealthy way, a codependent way.
Yep.
But in some ways I learned to be good to myself by just thinking to do for myself what I would do for a friend. So for better or worse, very relational and just really interested in why people would be healthy or not. Just over and over again, moments after moments after moments. That's been my actual process. And then the consequence of that was a manifestation was going to medical school and then getting functional medicine training sort of just because that the energy of how I was relating to the moment led to a toolbox that could be one way to hold space for this. And when I'm really honest with myself, this explains what my naturopathic mentor said. She said, you'll see so many different ways that people get to health. So one person will take yarrow and walk their dog more often and be nicer to their spouse. And another person will do Chinese medicine acupuncture. And another person will get chemo and radiation and then eat whole food. And they all get healthy. So, so you have to be really honest with yourself that the when we talk today, I think what's happening is the things that we pick that are wisdom, the the most humbling thing is if you had to pick who to work with, you should work with Christine because the body knows the way. And anybody else is just providing these bridging measures. And in a way, what they're doing is medication, botanicals, nutraceuticals, yoga, etc. They're just creating a space for or providing signals of safety for the hardware and software to reboot, just to get back to factory settings.
Totally.
So, and then I think, gosh, that's so great. One of my favorite authors, David James Duncan, who I have invoked from time to time, his first book's kind of a coming age book called The River Why about life in the Pacific Northwest and being a fisherman. And again, a connection to something larger. And Gus, the main character, he's hanging out with this philosopher and kind of saying, well, if creator or goddess, whatever term we want to use for that, why do they need us at all? But because he's a fly fisherman, he says, well, you know, this entity that's bigger than ourselves, it can catch fish, but when it does it with a fly rod, it's more beautiful, right? And so it's very humbling to me to realize it sort of doesn't feel like me. It's the person and their connection to the divine that ultimately it's holding a space for that. That's what's really happening. And then the tools just become really beautiful because they're just like the fly rod. So something that decreases inflammation, helps the brain feel safer to reboot, etc. And I think it's the best way to work because then ego diminishes. That's how I would characterize what you said.
That's so beautiful. I love what you just said because it really is really true. I've reflected a lot is since I've been doing this work and witnessed other people as well. It's like, yeah, it's not that there's any one modality necessarily that's superior to another. I definitely love like these natural or ancient or esoteric or Eastern modalities because they pull from this deep wisdom that kind of is not the same level of wisdom as like the modern pharmaceutical paradigm, but it is all supporting the body's natural desire to reach homeostasis.
Mhm.
And so it is really beautiful to see. I love it so much. That's why, like, my view on nutrition has also shifted a lot as well. Just because you see so many people be receptive to so many different types of diets. Like, I can't say there's one diet for MS. Like, I know so many people who are thriving, and we all eat different things. And I see how my diet has shifted over 20 years so much. And now, are there certain things? Do I still have celiac? Yeah, I do. But outside of that, I think like it's been really humbling. I agree. It's so humbling to realize that the body has this divine intelligence that we can't even really begin to understand, really. And I just am in awe of it all the time in myself and as I witness others. But I wonder though if it is about people being in their truth, right? And like being connected to their truth. And I feel like that this inner truth, right, that we've also been threading into this conversation, it's all within us. And all healing is within us. And everything that you seek outside of yourself is within you. But how do we get there? How do we find that? And I assert that it's 30 seconds at a time. And you just learn how to meet yourself and you learn to trust yourself. And it starts in these micro moments and you learn that you can handle 30 seconds at a time and then it grows and then you're able to witness for yourself all of your body's phenomenal wisdom, and it's shocking and a lot to behold.
Mm, mm. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank you
what
for
you
having me
do.
on.
Yeah. Where can people find you, Christine?
My website, christineruch.com. And I have a Substack. You can read all about my opinions on the healing process and why the nervous system is an important part that shouldn't be overlooked no matter what your healing is. It doesn't even have to be a physical ailment, it could be psycho-spiritual, mental. And yeah, book a call with me. I'm happy to chat with people. I also have done a number of podcasts, so you can find links online as well.
Wonderful. Well, have a great rest of your day. Happy spring.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for joining us for the Seaworthy podcast. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. If you think we've earned it, please consider giving this podcast a like, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. Thanks.